So we have been hearing a lot about failures of imagination lately. It seems that any time America is in a crisis, our imaginations fail us. This is what Lee Bollinger, former president of Columbia University, had to say recently, quote, "We're in the midst of an authoritarian takeover of the US government. It's been coming, and not everybody is prepared to read it that way. Our problem, in part, is a failure of imagination. We cannot get ourselves to see how this is going to unfold in its most frightening versions. You neutralize the branches of government, you neutralize the media, you neutralize universities, and you're on your way," unquote. Yes, we are well on our way, aren't we? But failures of imagination, that has always bothered me because the seeds for all of this were planted a very long time ago, and we did nothing, absolutely nothing, to root out the causes of where we are right now. Remember after September 11th, I think it was Condoleezza Rice said, "Who could have imagined that somebody would fly a plane into the World Trade Center, or two for that matter?" Well, Stephen King did in a novel written a few years earlier. People who are paying attention could have imagined such things. Many of us who have been paying attention knew exactly where this was all heading. So the question remains, how long will it take for other people to start using their imaginations? Or, you know what? We don't even need that anymore. How long will it take before people start to see what's actually happening before their eyes? Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's episode of Mary Trump's Nerd Avengers. It's great to have you with us. I hope you all had a relaxing weekend. Nothing happened. We're going to catch you up. With me today are Waj Ali, editor of Left Hook Substack, which you must subscribe to immediately, and co-host along with Danielle Moody of Democracy-ish, also in Mary Trump Media. Brian Karam, White House reporter and best-selling author, as well as host of The Reverse Shot. Danielle Moody, aforementioned, host of the Danielle Moody Show and co-host of Democracy-ish on Mary Trump Media. Find her channel. Also has a Substack to which you must subscribe. Stat. Norm Ornstein, emeritus scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and co-host of the most excellent Words Matter podcast with the awesome. It is great to have everybody with me today. How is everybody doing? Because, oh my goodness gracious, it continues apace, does it not? So I want to start with what I think is in some ways the most consequential news happening right now, even though a lot of it is kind of playing out in the courts in a way that wouldn't be remarkable under other circumstances, and that's the deportations. Judge Boasberg has ordered the deportations halted, and the Trump regime is sent the planes anyway. So I keep hearing, you guys, that's the Rubicon, right? Right, Norm? That's the Rubicon. I thought we crossed the Rubicon a long time ago, but who knows? The Rubicon is when Donald Trump and his regime start to defy judges' orders. So on March 15th, Judge Boasberg, who's a U.S. district judge, ruled that deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, which is very old, by the way, must stop immediately. But two had already taken off. One took off after the ruling, which is a blatant defiance of a court order. And of course, El Salvador's president is mocking the court order as well, because these are the kinds of people who are allies now. the ACLU is pressuring somebody in Donald's DOJ, because that's what it is now. It is now Donald's personal attorneys are now ensconced at the DOJ, and the DOJ's vast power and resources are solely for the purpose of promoting Donald's agenda and protecting him as an individual. They want him to testify. I do not think that is going to happen. And of course, Donald's loyalists are not just defending the regime's defiance of the judges, they are mocking judges, they are attacking judges, they are doing everything in their power to undermine the rule of law. Among the worst of these is the fascist, what's his name, Tom Homan, who is the the border czar. So let's play that clip, and then Norm, you and I can talk about on the other side.
It doesn't look like you're getting support from the Democrats on this. You're going against the judges now. What's next?
Another flight every day. The teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Wow, Norm, that sounds like a democracy with three co-equal branches of government, doesn't it?
Tom Homan is a psychopath and a Nazi,
Yes.
and a disgusting excuse for a human being. But let's unpack some of this, Mary. First, the lawyers appearing before Judge Boasberg, who, by the way, is one of the most highly respected judges across the board in the country, chief judge of the district court here. The Trump lawyers have lied to him and raised utterly specious arguments, one of them being now, after they tried to cancel the hearing he was doing yesterday, that these flights were the commander-in-chief using military resources. This was a private chartered jet chartered by the Department of Homeland Security, had nothing to do with the military. The argument that because the planes were over international waters is ridiculous and specious. And of course, as you mentioned, one of the flights hadn't even taken off yet. I would love to see Judge Boasberg hold these lawyers and Tom Homan in contempt and at least try to get U.S. Marshals to haul them into jail. Although most likely what would happen, since Donald Trump threw out the head of the U.S. Marshals and replaced him with another lickspittle, the marshals might be forbidden from doing so. But we need to try and do some of these things. These lawyers are outrageous. One of the challenges we have now is that this has gone to a 3-judge panel in the D.C. Circuit, and it includes 2 judges who are questionable. One, Karen LaCraft Henderson, an H.W. Bush appointee who I had come into contact with years ago when the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, of which I had been a part, was being challenged in the courts. She issued a dissent from the ruling that allowed it to go forward to the Supreme Court that was puerile, infantile, and stupid. She is not the sharpest pencil in the box, but is a right-wing nut. And then there's a Trump judge. How, however, they could rule against Judge Boasberg, who used the direct language of this law to show that they were violating it, is, it would take a level of deceit equal to what Sam Alito does in every ruling that he makes. But we should also note that they picked up these Venezuelans, including several who have no connection to a gang because they had tattoos that were demonstrably completely different from anything that this violent gang has, and did it to do a Leni Riefenstahl style propaganda video to show how tough they are. And of course, they knew one other thing. Given Chuck Schumer, they knew it perfectly well. that if they frame this as we're sending out to an El Salvadoran prison vicious gang members here in the United States, that Democrats would do next to nothing in Congress because they didn't want to have an argument over whether they're supporting gangbangers or not. And they were right. So we're in a bad place, and this is a really awful setting to be in. And we're going to see now, because at some point this one's going to the Supreme Court, whether we still have 5 justices who will stand up for what is the plain language of the law and the blatant defiance by not just a president, but his lawyers who are basically acting like mob lawyers.
Yeah, this is quite bad. There's literally no other way to frame it because it is cutting away at things that we thought we could count on, as they're doing everywhere. But I believe we do have a clip of that video, the deportations clip. So let's play that.
Hundreds of alleged Venezuelan gang members are waking up in prison in El Salvador after the Trump administration rapidly deported them, ignoring a federal judge's directive. This video, shared by El Salvador's president, shows the alleged members of the Tren de Aragua gang arriving in San Salvador Saturday, just hours after a judge ordered planes carrying the men to immediately return to the U.S. Trump over the weekend invoking the Alien Enemies Act, an obscure wartime law from 1798, allowing the government to deport non-citizens with little or no due process. The law last used to play a role in the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
Awesome. Danielle, optics are everything. And I think Norm nailed it when he said Leni Riefenstahl. That's sort of where we are now. Of course, there also, by the way, in that video, I think they forgot the word allegedly.
Yeah.
Because as Norm also pointed out, there has been no due process. We do not know whether or not these people are members of gangs. And there's part of me that doesn't even think that's relevant to much of what we're talking about right now. Because this is the slippery slope. This gets us more than halfway down the slippery slope. So, of course, they are denying this, and the execrable White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is denying that the Trump regime is refusing to comply with the judge. I'm going to believe the judge in this instance. I will always believe anybody who tells me that these people are lying, because they're always lying. But at the same time, of course, you question whether or not the judge even had the authority to issue the ruling. See formerly mentioned slippery slope. So I want to play this clip, Danielle, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Is the administration prepared to give the court what it wants in terms of the time of the flights that departed, that went to El Salvador, and some of those details that the judge is asking for in trying to determine the timing?
All of the planes that were subject to the written order, the judge's written order, took off before the order was entered in the courtroom on Saturday. And the administration will, of course, be happily answering all of those questions that the judge poses in court later today.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were in the air?
There's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order, as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court.
Oh, the sophistry of this woman. What did she go to school for this? I mean, seriously. No. I mean, just the mendacity, the
Trump University.
The what?
Trump University.
Yeah. That tracks. That totally tracks. Yeah. So Danielle, here we are. One, they're just lying about it because they did defy the order, and two, they are then suggesting that they had every right to do this thing they just denied having done, because it was a verbal order, not a written order. It was signed with a pen versus signed with an auto pen. That's how they're playing all of this right now.
Yeah, who's on first? I'm on second. Who's on third? Like they are pretty much playing. What is it? The hidden cup game. What is that? Monte Carlo? I don't know.
3-card Monte.
3-card. Yeah. Ricard Monti with people's lives. The fact of the matter is that I said this the same as you, Mary. We have no idea if these people are actually criminals because we are taking whose word for it? Donald Trump and JD Vance and Tom Homan. Their criminality is based on tattoos and their complexion, right? The level of melanin that they have. So basically, where we have arrived is not just inside of a very active constitutional crisis volcano that is erupting all over this country. But the fact is that no one is going to do anything about it, right? So you have right now the courts using what power they have, which is to determine right from wrong, law from not. And that is only as strong as those that are willing to follow the law. So what we understand now is that laws don't actually matter in this country, because if you can decide that I don't give a damn what the judges say, as Tom Homan said, we're going to load more planes, we're going to do more things, and we can play word games like Levitt just did with, oh, I don't know if a verbal order is as important as this, that, or the other thing. And they're just going to continue doing what they're doing. But the question is, so what's the recourse? Right? There is absolutely no recourse, because guess what? The courts don't have law enforcement or military. So are they going to arrest Tom Homan? Right? Are they going to arrest Donald Trump? We have, I mean, that display, that propaganda, Hollywood theatrics that they did, were those people actually even real military? We don't know, because guess what? Their faces are covered. For all we know, that could have been the 1,600 members of the January 6th insurrection crew that was pardoned, that Donald Trump has now potentially deputized as part of his own militia. So we don't even know who are the people that are transporting these supposed criminals that have not received due process. And at this time, frankly, we have a Senate minority leader who was more concerned with the postponement of his book tour than he has been about doing anything about what is happening in this country day by day, moment by moment, right? So, again, all of this is happening not just because Donald Trump and his followers are rabid white nationalists and mobsters. It's happening because Democrats have laid down and have allowed it to happen, because they have refused to actually tell the story to the American people the way that they need to hear it. And so we're here, where Donald Trump has decided that the Constitution was a suggestion that he doesn't actually need to follow.
Yeah. And as I said at the top of the show, this is a very long time coming. I mean, it should not surprise us that he's reaching back to the late 18th century, which is not long after Jim Crow started, and, after the failures of, sorry, not the failures of Reconstruction, the failures of white Northerners to give a shit about Reconstruction and the possibilities, the potential, around the same time as Plessy versus Ferguson, the good old days they want to bring us back to. But right now, to Danielle's point, was you and what army are going to stop us? Last I checked, the judiciary doesn't have a prison system. They have no ways to enforce their rulings, because who needed one before? Well, now we do. So, not surprisingly, Judge Boasberg is frustrated, but because part of it is the obvious, very serious stuff, but part of it too, and this is a long standing tradition, if you will. Donald's lawyers suck, right? They're terrible at what they do. They're insulting, they're condescending, they're rude to the people who are judging, making judgments over their positions, and they never comply completely, and they show up unprepared. They're just contemptuous of the whole process. And of course, Donald's trying to get the DOJ is trying to get the judge removed, which is just a completely specious ridiculous move that they're making. They're trying to get the hearings canceled. And of course, because it's Donald, they are attacking the judge for doing his job. Like, that's what the right has always been doing. They're attacking people who are actually doing their jobs, which include, to a large degree, stopping Donald's fascist authoritarian takeover of the United States. It's not going well for us, but this is all making him so furious because how dare anybody, including somebody with authority, disallow him from doing whatever he wants to do whenever he wants to do it. So this is what he had to say. Sorry to share this with you because it's so unbelievable. That's totally believable, but it's still awful. On his failing social media web thing, sorry, I don't know what it's called. He wrote this quote: "This radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker and agitator who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president. He didn't win the popular vote by a lot. He didn't win all 7 swing states. He didn't win 2,750 to 525 counties. He didn't win anything. I won for many reasons in an overwhelming mandate, but fighting illegal immigration may have been the number one reason for this historic victory. Blah, 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 blah. We don't want vicious, violent, and demented criminals, many of them deranged murderers in our country. Blah, blah, blah." Yeah, Donald, we don't. So could you please leave? That would be awesome.
We're perfectly fine, though, with importing sex traffickers from Romania, which is why MAGA...
Are they white?
Andrew Tate.
Okay, cool. Then it's fine.
Andrew and Tristan Tate, thanks to Richard Grenell and Trump, did a backroom deal with Romania, and these two brothers, even if they had no charges against them, you just heard them, some of those vicious, disgusting, nasty, misogynist stuff ever. Just listen to the way they talk about women and how Andrew Tate talks about his future daughter. They embrace them. So pro-rape, they just had Conor McGregor at the White House on St. Paddy's Day, who gave an anti-immigration rant. Conor McGregor, MMA fighter who lost a civil rape suit. Anti-DEI, but they were perfectly fine making an exception for St. Paddy's Day and to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I wonder why. The same day we found out that Navajo code talkers who helped us win World War II with their, wait for it, DEI indigenous language were scrubbed from history books. This is happening. So you're pro-rape, pro-sexual sex trafficking, pro-terrorism, because 1,600 violent insurrectionists were pardoned, including individuals who were charged with and found guilty of what? Secession. Right. We're talking about the Oath Keepers leader Stuart Rhodes. We're talking about Enrique Tarrio. So they're pro-terrorism. So if you kind of like, tracking this, folks, I said this, I think yesterday, we've all said this, you can commit any crime as long as you wear a MAGA hat and praise Trump. It's like the movie Purge for the next 4 years. You just have to wear a MAGA hat and praise Trump. And I just gave you 3 examples: sex trafficking, rape, and literally a violent insurrection. And so people who say, "Oh, it's just, we're gonna go down the slippery slope," I am of the opinion we're already in it. I believe we're in an authoritarian age. If people don't believe me, I give you the past week. Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian activist, was a test case. These innocent, we just found out, as Danielle said, I'm glad she spent time on it. Many of these individuals, the family members have spoken up. They're like, there's this 18-year-old kid who just got a tattoo because he thought it was cool. There's an immigrant here who's here legally on asylum. So we, the United States of America, is paying this crypto-fascist dictator bro of El Salvador, Bukele, $6 million to imprison and most likely torture innocent folks. And then Steve Bannon said, you know what? I'm glad he did it. Sure, a few innocent gardeners probably got swept up. I'm sure they're swell guys. And that video that Danielle talked about is they found 0 time for due process, Mary, but they found time for excellent deep cut reference, Leni Riefenstahl type documentary. And for those who don't know who Leni Riefenstahl was, she was I hate saying this, kind of a brilliant documentarian, unfortunately used her talents for evil. for Hitler. And that was exactly what she did. She made Hitler look beautiful and grand and like vast and like elegant, right? Part of the Goebbels propaganda machine. And so the other test case was this judge, like you mentioned, you know, and you alluded to it, that famous quote attributed to Andrew Jackson, you know, Justice Marshall has made his decision. Now let's see him enforce it. And they're openly now saying, in typical MAGA trollish language, we own the libs. You're wrecked. Go ahead, prove it. What are you going to do about it? What you going to do about it? And America said nothing, because the judge really has no army to enforce it. They ignored the judge the day they deported him. They ignored the judge, it seems today, because yesterday, because the judge wants Donald Trump to appear. Now they're trying to remove the judge. Also, with the federal freeze of the funds, they went ahead and did it. Now they're going after Social Security. So the one thing I want to say, Mary, real quick, is Democrats aren't going to save us. The judges aren't going to save us. Law enforcement isn't going to save us. The media isn't going to save us. We're now in an authoritarian-esque regime. And I think the two things that could save us, number one, the people, because we have the numbers. And the other thing I think that could save us is overreach. Because like you mentioned, these are, like you saw Tom Homan, he's like Luca Brasi, brutal, but not too smart. They're arrogant. They are like these impetuous, arrogant teens who get a little bit of power, but don't have experience. They're going to overreach, and they've already overreached. Donald is negative 13 in the economy. It's the lowest he's ever been. Egg prices are still high, trade war, recession's coming, and now they're openly gloating about going after Social Security, and they think they're being super clever by trying to shut down, like, you know, the phone services. Who uses Social Security? Are elders. How do most people like contact the office? Through phone services. I believe, let's see, I might be wrong, one of the third rails has always been Social Security. Republicans have tried to go after Social Security since, you know, Norm will tell you, Reagan era. Each time they get really close, massive backlash. So with all this plus Social Security, I believe once those Social Security checks stop coming and Medicaid's checks stop coming, which is going to happen, and probably in a month, Mary, I think you're going to see some type of a rise. Now, that doesn't mean things are going to get better. I think things are going to get worse, but you're going to see a flip. The problem is Donald isn't leaving. I don't think he's leaving, folks. I'll say it on your show. If I'm wrong, I've been wrong before. I'll eat halal crow. He's not leaving.
He's not.
He wants civil disobedience so that he can unleash the military and National Guard like he promised he would by quoting Hitler, saying he'd do it against the enemies from within. And my fear is they're aiming for martial law. Sorry to give you a lot there, but things on my mind.
Oh, eyes wide open, and it's all true. I mean, what, like, there's literally no argument against any of that. If anybody thinks that that's not in the cards, then they have a failure of imagination. Because the evidence it's not just evidence that we can see, it's what they've said. So we could talk about just this all day long, but I do want to shift gears, Brian, because there has been a lot going on, all of it bad, with Ukraine. Donald is supposed to talk to Putin today. Last I checked, Putin was busy with something else. So it's keeping Donald waiting, which I know is a tiny thing, but it still brings me joy. Because Donald keeps people waiting all the time. He's so incredibly rude. So it's nice to see Putin pulling the leash a little tighter to make sure that his puppet and puppy behave. Anyway, they're supposed to be talking at some point.
They just started. We just
started, so yeah. It's a little late. Sorry, Donald. Must suck to be you. It definitely does. I can confirm that. They're talking about the 30-day ceasefire deal, which I think is a bit of a travesty. And Donald said that the negotiations are looking at, quote unquote, dividing up certain assets. This is what he had to say in full. Quote, we'll be talking about land. A lot of land is a lot different than it was before the war. As you know, we'll be talking about land. We'll be talking about power plants. That's a big question. unquote. So, Brian, one, it's so good to see that he has such a firm grasp of all the nuances of the situation. And it is also just so despicable that we knew this was going to happen, but that this is now happening. They are literally talking about how to divide up Ukraine so Vladimir Putin can get the rest of whatever he wants without having to fire another shot.
Well, he'd love to get whatever he wants without having to fire another shot because Russia's crumbling, and they got about a year left, according to most DOD.
Not anymore.
Before their economy collapses, they're still on the path, the road to ruin. So all of this is designed to try and end everything before they destroy themselves. Donald Trump isn't good at playing the long game. This is going to take me a minute to unpack, but I just want to start with saying that, I had someone reach out to me who had voted for Trump twice. And he said, I didn't notice it was this bad. When did this happen? And I said, you got to be kidding me. If you didn't notice when he first made fun of a handicapped reporter, that should have been your telltale point. When they took Jim Acosta's press pass simply because he wouldn't give up a mic and he was trying to ask a question, that was a point you should have realized something was wrong. When they took mine for simply asking if you would stay out in the Rose Garden and answer a few questions, mind you, I didn't even get to ask that question. That should have been when you noticed. When the insurrection on January 6th, you should have noticed. His inability to recognize the fact that he lost, you should have noticed. Now you notice? Well, I'm welcoming you to reality, folks, but wake the up. It's anybody who thinks that we
I'm sorry, your mic cut out there for a second. What exactly did you say?
Fuck up. If you think that we are in a constitutional crisis, I join Lodge in saying, folks, that is in the rearview mirror. That was the first Donald Trump administration. This is post-apocalyptic. And mind you, this particular idiot who's running our government right now, and by the way, Norm, I love the psychopath and Nazi Homan. I was going to say you really are insulting Hannibal Lecter, but what the hell? He is a psychopath. He's a moron, and he's dangerous. But this particular idiot that's running the shop right now as the president of the United States is also a member. He is so stupid, but he is so enamored of Hollywood that his ideas of fascism and autocracy, take a look at what's happened this past week. It is Judge Dredd. I am the law, right? He's playing Judge Dredd. And at the same time, if you watched what happened yesterday in the briefing room, his Con Air Act, we missed Nicolas Cage. He should have been on that flight, and he maybe could have stopped it. But every single person that they outlined, they lied about. All of them were Cyrus the Virus. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. They put these people as the lowest of the low, and Danielle, you nailed it. We don't know who these people were that were on the flight. We don't know what the flight was. We don't know who the people were that were hurting them. All we know is what we saw. It was a movie. It was fake. It was all there to draw your attention and make you think that he's making us safer, while at the same time he is not. And if you have any doubts about it, what is he doing today? He started out today by revoking I think it was Bachelor of Arts degrees and college degrees from people that he doesn't like. Folks, wake up, because Donald Trump is not about you. He's about him, and he's about retribution and revenge. And everything that he's done, he told you he was going to do when he ran for office. And he's doing it. So those who say he doesn't lie, I'll give you a break on that one. He's not lying about how bad he's going to treat us. But when you talk about Ukraine specifically, I want to remind you that where all of this starts and ends, and we did not push back on this in the White House press briefing yesterday, and this angered me to no end. The presidential PEP secretary got out and said, if Donald Trump had been in charge, they would never have invaded Ukraine. Well, that's a lie. That started in 2014. They invaded Crimea 11 years ago, February 20th, and Donald Trump was in office and he did nothing about it. And that is one of the reasons why Vladimir Putin felt emboldened, because Donald Trump did squat. So I'm sorry, that's a lie. And we should be calling that on the carpet every day. But you're not going to find us doing that, because I'll tell you who the Cyrus the Virus really is. It's Donald Trump. He's a virus that ate the Republican Party. He's a virus that ate up the press. He's the virus that has eaten up the judiciary and the legislative branch. The last one he's coming for is the judiciary. They will not be able to stand against him. Wise, you're right there. And Mary, you're right. At the end of the day, they don't have an army to fight him back. Homan told you exactly what they're going to do. They're going to stand against the judiciary, stand against the rule of law. And yes, they will declare at some point in time martial law. They'll call a national emergency when we fight back, and they're going to go, uh-oh, this is it. Martial law, I get a third term. That's where it's all. And if you doubt that, take a look at the emails I get every day from the Donald Trump campaign. They're still raising money. Why? Because he anticipates he's going to be running for a third term, or he may not. He may just cancel the elections and go, screw it. I'm here. Martial law. I'm here to stay. So, folks, It doesn't get much worse than this unless you were living in Nazi Germany. And by the way, your melanin color is not, there's no law that says that, the amount of melanin you have in your body is against the law. That's completely un-American.
Okay.
Sorry.
And also, it's also, of course, nobody's safe, even those of you who think you're safe. And we're seeing the finding out part. Some people are just like, wait a minute. Wasn't supposed
FAFO,
to be.
baby.
It was supposed to be all those other people. So, sorry. What a shame. I just want to wrap this up really quickly and then move on to the next topic. And we have a little bit of breaking news. So in 2023, the United States joined the International Center for Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine. That was more than 40 countries holding the leaders of Russia and its allies, Belarus, North Korea, and Iran accountable for a category of crimes listed as aggression under an international law. And the Trump regime just announced our withdrawal from that agreement because, of course, they did. Also, look for part of this deal being Russia's blocking of Ukraine's ability to join NATO at any time. The breaking news is that I don't know if you remember this guy, but his name is John Roberts. He's, I think, the Chief Justice of the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court. He's awake. Danielle, he woke up. So exciting. Because, and of course, this is why he doesn't like it that judges are being threatened with impeachment. See, one of his own. It's so awesome that they care about their own people and not the real people who they're supposed to be protecting, by upholding the Constitution and stuff. So I'm sure that's going to have a massive impact on what happens going forward. Right now, I want to switch over to talk about what is happening at the universities and with the Department of Education. It's quite alarming. The Department of Education, which is not going to exist for much longer, so they have a lot to do in a short amount of time. They've launched investigations into over 50 universities targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that's a great use of taxpayer dollars, accusing schools of racial discrimination against white people and race exclusionary practices. Several universities like Arizona State and Ohio State have distanced themselves. Those are huge universities, by the way, from their DEI initiatives to avoid scrutiny. Way to hold the line, you huge universities that have like tens of thousands of students. 6 schools are facing investigations over race-based scholarships. And the Trump regime has also demanded that Columbia place its Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African studies departments under academic receivership for 5 years. So much for intellectual and academic freedom. After threatening to cut funding if they didn't comply with Donald's demands, Donald has moved on the threat. So I want to watch this clip.
Part of the statement from these agencies, the Department of Education and others, that said for too long Columbia has abandoned its obligation to Jewish students, and today we demonstrate to Columbia and other universities that we will not tolerate their appalling inaction any longer. That's from the new Education Secretary, Linda McMahon. Now we have this action coming from the Trump administration, Chris, where we've now seen about $400 million in federal grants and contracts that are being canceled by this administration because it doesn't believe that Columbia has done enough to protect Jewish students. And so we'll be listening to see what Columbia says it has done and what it will do in the future in hopes of trying to reinstate these grants and other programs, Chris.
So, Norm, they're talking about things like banning masks on campus, because apparently COVID doesn't exist anymore, just like, most of our history. Redefining anti-Semitism. I thought it was defined fairly well, but I guess I'm missing something. And overhauling admissions policies. So this is being described, I think with understatement, as unprecedented federal overreach into university governance and being compared with McCarthy era tactics. I don't know, Norm, it seems so much worse than that to me.
It is a whole lot worse. And let me just start by saying that their presumed sensitivity to anti-Semitism is unadulterated horseshit.
Yes.
The person they put in charge of combating anti-Semitism tweeted out a Nazi message. This is pretext for basically destroying elite higher education after they've tried, and what we're seeing in a whole lot of states is to destroy public education more generally. It's outrageous. I want to go as we talk about that, and let's keep in mind the $400 billion in Columbia grants, 800 for Johns Hopkins, which is now laying off 2,000 people. This is the most cutting edge research into health issues and terrible diseases going on anywhere in the country. These are the two centers for it. They are, along with that, they have tried to cut off all research into mRNA vaccines, even as we are on the verge of a breakthrough with cancer using mRNA technology. They've cut off all the research for pediatric brain cancer. The level of evil here is beyond belief. You mentioned DEI, and let's just note that Pete Hegseth and the Defense Department are trying to erase every indication of heroism, bravery, patriotism by people of color and women. They did this with the Tuskegee Airmen. They did it with one of our great heroes, a Black Medal of Honor winner. And we know from historic racism that for any Black soldier to get a Medal of Honor, you had to do 10 times as much as any white soldier getting a Medal of Honor. They've just erased all references to the Navajo code breakers who were critical in our ability to win in World War II. So they are trying, this is so blatantly racist and that it boggles the mind. I will just add before I conclude this little segment on John Roberts. When I saw that statement, I thought I could see him writing in lipstick on a mirror, "Stop me before I kill again," because he unleashed this monster with the outrageous immunity decision. And now
that's important, Norm.
We went a little too far, but just saying we shouldn't talk about impeachment. We'll see what happens when they finally get a critical decision that Trump ignores.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because also it made me laugh to see John Roberts just cowering in front of his bathroom mirror thinking, what have I done? You know exactly what you did. You just don't like that the consequences are going to come back and bite you and people like you. Yeah. You don't care about the rest of us, obviously. So, Danielle, getting back to what Norm was just talking about, this is again, I think it's the rapidity and the depth of the depravity that are kind of knocking some people off. But all of this, the groundwork for this has been laid for quite a long time. I mean, the right has been trying to erase our history to, in their view, I mean, this is not what it would accomplish, but in their view, protect white children from our actual history at the expense of children of color, to protect their idea of the normative, the traditional family from blended families or LGBTQ plus families at the expense of children who belong to such families. They have been banning books forever. They have been on that road for a very long time to marginalize, to exclude, etc. So again, this is just all of a piece. Just it's the rest of it is. This is the logical conclusion to the road we've been on forever, and yet it is so comprehensive and kind of breathtaking. I mean, in addition to the things Norm mentioned, and Waj mentioned, the Pentagon is removing a webpage on the Iwo Jima flag raiser because he was Native American. So I don't really have a question so much as I'm just curious to hear what you have to think about these particular horrors, because basically what is being completely dismantled is our ability to do what all of us here have been saying quite vehemently for a long time that we need to do as a country, to become the multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, diverse, accepting, potentially real democracy we've never been. And that's getting harder by the second.
I want to go back to what you said in your stellar opening around the lack of and failure of imagination that this country has had. I think that America, by virtue of the consistent erasure of its own white domestic terrorism, hasn't ever had the ability to comprehend the damage that white Americans have done in this country. And by virtue of that, have never then had the understanding of how far they would be willing to go in order to maintain and expand power. And so when you look at these things that have happened, and people love to throw up, well, but Obama, right? It is the thought that America could welcome in its first Black president without actually ever having to confront American racism, right? It's this idea that like you could just sidestep facing the hard truths of American history that has brought us to this present, that had us with a failure of imagination during the Obama years, not recognize what was brewing inside of the Tea Party that would then turn into the white nationalist anti-American MAGA party. It was this idea that, look, we don't need, right? And we're not going to go down the paths of other nations that have violently fought to hold on to or create democracy, that somehow American exceptionalism was going to buy us out of that reality. And so we're here. Like if and I say this like in so many ways that I want people to understand that, I can recall in my history texts, right, a 700-page book that would lay out America's history with but a chapter around civil rights. So if you think that the erasure is just happening now under this administration, then you haven't been paying attention, because the sheer presence, right, and of Donald Trump and his ability to win not one but two elections is because America has refused to face its original sins of white delusion and racism, as well as misogyny. And those two things that Donald Trump represents in spades. And so, ask yourselves why you only know about 5 Black leaders that white Americans have allowed us to know about, but you don't know, right, about the legions of people that got this country to its place of democracy, that we don't actually talk about the fact that you wouldn't have had a women's rights movement or an LGBTQ plus movement or a Latino workers movement if not for, right, Black people in this country fighting for rights and access and for America to live up to its ideals. So what Donald Trump and his regime are doing right now is what America has been doing for 250 years. They've just accelerated it and utilized different media platforms to expand it. But to believe that somehow, right, like erasing these things that we don't actually teach young people and haven't unpacked in our history in K through 12 or post, right, is somehow like, oh, now we should pay attention. Donald Trump wouldn't have been able to exist if we had been paying attention from the beginning and challenged America to actually look at itself.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, all of that. Hang on a sec. Because we're almost out of time. But I just want to say something. I don't typically do this sort of thing, but I want Walsh to be proud of me. So I'm going to do this. My second book, called The Reckoning, is actually about the failure of white people to recognize those two original sins, the genocide of the native populations and the kidnapping, torture, and enslavement of an entire group of people and enslaving them for generations, like generational slavery, like that was unique to America, and utterly failing ever to acknowledge it, to acknowledge it, let alone atone for it. That's why we are where we are. Plus a lot of crazy religion. Anyway, sorry, Brian, go ahead. You're muted.
I was just going to say some of us did. It just bugs me that people didn't pay attention to some of us who did, and you know, I'm not just including myself, but God bless, there were Democrats, Republicans, members of Congress, members of the judiciary, voters, people who knew Donald Trump, people who worked with him. Everybody warned us that, you know, who this guy was, and no one paid attention, or at least 77 million voters didn't. And one thing I will give them is that they at least voted. A lot of this, it's our responsibility. When 64%, when you consider 64% voter turnout, a great voter turnout, you get a super minority electing who they want to president. You don't get a majority. Majority doesn't rule. A super minority does. And a super minority of Americans apparently are morons. Think of how stupid the average person is and realize, as George Carlin said, half of them are stupider than that. But they're smart enough to vote, and they take the time to do it. So if you want to change anything, if you ever get the chance to vote again, by God, go out and do it and quit complaining about it, but vote.
Yeah,
I mean, I texted you some breaking news, Mary, if you wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Also, I mean, Waj, I'm less and less inclined to give anybody a pass. In fact, I'm pretty much not inclined at all. But I do think it's worth remembering that tens of millions of people have been lied to constantly for about 4 decades now, plus the siloing of information. But again, we see Donald enough. If you're okay with that, regardless of who's lying to you, then I don't know that there's hope for you anymore. Anyway, obviously there was a lot to cover today. We didn't get to nearly enough of it, but I wanted to talk briefly about something that may not seem like a big deal, but it is so straight out of the autocratic playbook. I did think it was worth mentioning. First of all, Donald has canceled Secret Service protection for Hunter and Ashley Biden. Those are President Joe Biden's children, by the way. And I'm guessing that they are probably in need of Secret Service protection now more than they ever were, perhaps. The decision was effective immediately. I'm not going to read what Donald had to say about it, but this is clearly a concern about their new vulnerability and raising questions about political weaponization of security protections, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I do not understand why one person is allowed to make that decision. That should just be the way it is. If you're in that family, you get Secret Service protection forever, period, end of story. But no, we don't live in that country anymore. And then, of course, and this is the part I wanted to get your take on, Donald declared that Joe Biden's preemptive pardons of January 6th committee members are void. And he's using the excuse it's because they were signed with an auto pen. I mean, I know Donald really loves signing his stupid name with a Sharpie, but I'm pretty sure he didn't sign all of the 1,600 pardons letting the January 6th insurrectionists and seditionists out of prison. But maybe he did because he doesn't really have much else to do other than drink Diet Coke and play golf.
Didn't.
But when asked if he'd ever used the same practice, being the auto pen, this is what he had to say.
Have you yourself ever used auto pens, sir?
Yeah, only for very unimportant papers. And I don't call them unimportant. If you do letters where people write in and, you know, they'd love to have a response, or we'll write responses. And I'll sign them whenever I can, but when I can't, I would use an auto pen. But to use them for what they've used them for is terrible.
Okay, so if it's like a real human being who's written to me and really it means a lot to them, I'll use the auto pen. But otherwise, if I'm just being an autocratic fascist monster, sure, I'll sign it myself. And if you don't do that, then it doesn't count.
I know we're running up against the 1 p.m. Danielle has to jump and Brian still has to speak. But all I'll just say is we're in it now, folks. And what Brian has been confronted with, Danielle, myself, I'm sure Norm and you have as well, where people are coming up to us and saying, did you know it would be this bad? And my response is yes, it'll get worse. And then some people who voted for Donald or didn't vote are like, wow, yeah, we messed up. Oh, well, do you think it'll get better? And I'm like, nope, not in our lifetime. So we're in it now, folks. And every generation has a challenge. This is the way I look at it, very quickly. My grandparents had to endure partition. They had to pick up everything and leave. So many people died. My parents' generation crossed thousands of miles to come to a country that they had never visited before and to create a community. We're not unique and we're not special. There are people all around the world who suffer. You're seeing it in Israel and Gaza, in Yemen right now. We didn't even talk about that, the cruelty, the civilians who are dying in Ukraine, in Syria, in Hungary, right? And so why are we special, Mary? And that failure of imagination was, it can't happen here. Of course it can. If you bring in a cruel authoritarian who cares about nothing but himself, and he is enabled by Luca Brasi's at every aspect of the government, you get the situation. So this is the fight of our lifetime. And to quote Shakespeare in Julius Caesar, cowards die 1,000 deaths every day. Those who are courageous die one big death. And so we have to use the time that we have, especially for our kids, if you're a parent, to do what we can at every single level to resist this. And what we can do is first and foremost, take care of ourselves, realize what we're in, open our eyes, acknowledge the comet coming from the sky. I don't want martyrs. I want people to live long, healthy lives because we're in it for a long walk. Your local community, make that the bulwark, and then use your voice to speak out. I don't know if in our lifetime, Mary, we can undo the damages, but we can at least secure our place in history that we did something.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned that, this is a long time coming, that it can happen here. It is happening here. I would also say it already happened here, obviously, but it already happened here not that long ago. The American South during Jim Crow was a closed fascist system. But I guess we kept that well enough hidden from the rest of the world that we were seen as a beacon of democracy. So, as I said earlier, the groundwork has been laid for a long time. All right. I quickly want to get to everybody's comments. Thank a couple of people. Excuse me. Warren, thank you, Warren. That's fantastic comment. The French are now wanting the Statue of Liberty to be returned due to how divisive the administration is. Yeah, divisive and anti-democratic. So I think that's also a reason. And ain't that a kick in the teeth? And do I blame France? No, I completely concur that we should return her, but I don't want to because she's right there, and I like seeing her when I'm outside. Kind of reminds me of the good old days that never really existed, Gun 181, cheers from Australia. Well, thank you so much for that. We very much appreciate it. Liberté, thank you so very much. Question was the likelihood of the military refusing to obey unconstitutional orders, such as if martial law is enforced against nonviolent protest. Norm, you want to take that question?
I would just say some will refuse.
Right.
A whole lot will not. And that's the problem. And the problem is he's installed generals and a Secretary of Defense who will order them to do anything illegal. And they will have protection of a Trump pardon, even if it's signed by an auto pen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Especially if it's signed
there'll be a new constitutional amendment about Donald signing things with auto pens, I believe. But yeah, that is the issue. Leadership is being loyalist leaders are being installed, and that's the problem. Katie, thank you so very much. Comment, thanks for being here, nerds. We are more than happy to be here, so thank you. Cindy comment, it really hurts him for us to boycott Tesla, so that's helping. Boycott anything Kardashian now too. Oh my goodness gracious. I don't think Kim Kardashian had yet enough money. So of course she had to do that. It's disgusting. Yes, that anybody who's willing to make money shilling for fascists is somebody who should not be accepted into
What did she do?
society.
I missed it. Is she in a Tesla ad?
She did a whole like photo shoot in favor of Tesla.
Yeah.
And fascism.
I'm done with her.
You know,
I've been
that's
done with
implied.
her for a while.
Somebody, by the way, just burned up a huge number of Teslas in a lot in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
and,
I saw that.
And Musk plaintively tweeted, "Tesla only makes electric cars. What have we done?"
Aw. Will nobody think of the baby Teslas? Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, that's honestly
can't get out of snow.
Victim Elon Musk.
Well, that's why he and Donald get along so well.
Yeah.
The grievance of the massively entitled failing upward white man. It's just such a travesty. Super sticker Serenity, thank you so very much for that. Elise, thank you. Dana, another super sticker, thank you very much. Caroline, thank you as always, another super sticker. We appreciate it. And Howie22, thank you very much. Comment, good luck getting very many new military hires. Yeah, who's going to join up at this point? I don't know.
MAGA members.
They're going to have to change the requirements. I think. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. All right, that does it for us. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody watching on YouTube. The dwindling number of people who are able to find us on Twitter. It's a very small number, I'm sure. Everybody who's watching the live stream on my Substack, and of course, everybody listening to the podcast, we so appreciate that. All your comments are great. Our super stickers, everybody giving us gifts. I promise you it is all going to the good cause of growing independent media, which is desperately, desperately, desperately needed in this country. Another way to help us out is to subscribe to our channel, to like and share our videos. We have videos dropping every day. We have Mary Trump Live Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And of course, everything Waj and Brian and Danielle and Norm are doing, please check everybody out. Their stuff is invaluable and
Substack.
necessary. Huh?
Go to Substack.
Yeah,
All of
go to
us are there.
Substack. Everybody, I think everybody is on Substack who's a nerd. So, you know, we're starting our own revolution over there too. Just
And
in case
Waj
you
has
were
a
wondering.
great. I'm going to plug Waj's. I love Waj's Substack.
Yeah, the left hook.
Thank
I
you.
I always say it is absolutely essential reading. So check out everybody's Substacks. Brian, what's yours called?
It's Reporter's Notebook at Brian Karam. So
There you go. Mine
you
is
can take
called.
a look at my coverage of the White House and all the other crap that's going on.
Yes, mine is called The Good in Us. Waj's is The Left Hook, etc., etc. Just Google the name and Substack, and you will find us. Thank you to our moderators for keeping this a place we all want to be. And of course, to my extraordinary team who keeps this place running seamlessly and, you know, in the process makes me look, I'm not going to say good, but better than I might otherwise. Let's put it that way. And of course, to Norm Ornstein, Delia Moody, Brian Karam, Waj Ali, thank you guys. I so appreciate everything you do and everything you are. Hopefully I will see you soon. Yep, nerds are back Thursday at noon. And in the meantime, and I'll be back tonight at 6. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe and be kind. Bye.